again to another edition of Tucson Media Partners Partner Profiles. I'm Brett Farah. Happy to be here again with you, and I'm happy with my longtime friend and now colleague, Eddie Celaya. Eddie, welcome to the program today.
Brett, thank you for having me on, man.
So Eddie, we've known each other for quite a few years. Now we work together here at Tucson Media Partners. You've been with the organization for about 3 years now. Tell us about what your role is today, what you do for this organization and also for the community here in Tucson.
So I like to say I have the best job in the world. I am the cannabis reporter here in Southern Arizona for the Daily Star and for TucsonMarijuanaGuide.com, which is where you'll see a lot of my content kind of first. And what I do is I cover the, I guess you'd call it, budding industry here in Southern Arizona.
Funny. As we were preparing for this and getting ready and taking some notes, I kept trying to think of, I need some canna puns. There's a lot of things in the industry that use that. I wouldn't have thought of that one, so I like that you went with that.
Well, I do have a weekly newsletter as a part of this job, so that kind of comes with having to come up with those on the spot. But what I do is I cover the industry all the way from the very personal stories of people who are either bud tenders or dispensary owners and their kind of background. I do that with segments like To Be Blunt, which is question and answers. And then I do, breaking news stories. Just 2 weeks ago, the Tucson City Council voted to put a special exception process in place for new social equity dispensary owners who might be considering Tucson as a place to open their brick and mortar dispensary in these next 8-9 months.
We'll come back to this in a second. I want to kind of go back in time first. You know, you've had a handful of jobs here, but I want to go back even further than that. What was the first job you ever had in your work career? It could be as a teenager. What would you, I know you've done a lot. You've taught swim lessons to kids. You've done so many different things. What was the first one?
When I was 11 or 12 years old, I forget the name of the cafe down the street in Casa Grande, but we were living there in Casa Grande, and during the summer, my parents were like, hey, you're causing too much problems with your brothers. We need you to get a job. And I went and washed dishes for about 4 hours, 2 or 3 nights a week, down at a cafe just down the street from me.
Paid great, I assume.
I don't even remember if it paid $5 an hour at the time, but it was something that established a little bit of a work ethic in me. And if anything, kind of led me along the path of knowing that I didn't want to be doing something in a kitchen or very manual labor my entire life. So a good way of exposing me to the kind of approach to things that I would need to do in order to, I guess you would say, get a sit-down job.
Sure. Well, we're going to fast forward now to the past couple of years, the last 3 years here with the Arizona Daily Star, which is sort of the centerpiece here of Tucson Media Partners. And even in those 3 years, you've had a lot of roles. Share with me a little bit about the different opportunities you've had. You worked on the opinion desk, you've worked on the news desk. What have those been like, and how have they led to your current opportunity?
Yeah, so I initially started off in the opinion and editorial side with Sarah Gasson as kind of my lead editor. And that was really helped me grow as an interviewer and as somebody who would write stories not necessarily from my own point of view, but for something that might be for an institution like the Daily Star. And to be able to remove maybe, or at least acknowledge some of my own personal biases and try to eliminate those as much as possible. From there, I moved on to a position as a breaking news or general assignment reporter, and that's more along the lines of what you knew me as in college, and it was great to get back to getting those reporting chops back, being out in the field and asking questions for incidents that might have just happened or incidents that might have affected people in a way that was extremely emotional. It was good to be back there getting those muscles back again. And that helped me big time when it came to this position, where there's a little bit of mix of both. There's times where I'm writing pieces that are very institutional, that are very like, hey, let's approach what the new trends here in cannabis are for this coming year. That's something that, well, I might have sort of, hey, I really like this product. I need to think of it more from an institutional, like what is it that we're suggesting from Tucson Marijuana Guide. Yeah.
It's interesting to see how fast this has grown, not just here within our organization and your role. And you mentioned Tucson Marijuana Guide. We have a major event coming up this year.
We do.
So many different pieces of it, but it's also interesting, obviously, to see how it's grown communally. And I'm imagining that's the real impetus as to why the value was put on, hey, we need someone to cover this, because legalization in the state of Arizona became a hot topic over the last few years, multiple legalization attempts in terms of voter referendum efforts. And then as it expands nationwide, kind of walk us through that and how it's just skyrocketed as just a topic of societal interest, for lack of a better way to put it.
So that's really great you bring that up. Number one, you kind of mentioned it in that question. We are going to be hosting a huge vendor fair on April 4/22, April 22nd, called ChronicCon. And it's, number one, I think, an indication of how close, or maybe how in the mainstream cannabis really is. I actually got back about a month and a half ago from Las Vegas, and maybe one of the 5 largest conventions that they throw all year was what I went to, MJ BizCon. It's about 40,000 people at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Many of them are vendors or known entities within the industry, but many of them are just people coming to check it out for $10 a day. You see families out there. Now, there's no consumption inside, but you see families in there. And that goes to show you how ingratiated this product, this plant has become in the last real 5 years since you've seen this political movement towards adult legalization.
You mentioned the mainstream components of it, and that goes beyond Arizona too. Part of your role includes a little bit of a national of coverage for our parent company, Lee Enterprises. Kind of share that in terms of where we can actually find your work in both the local and national scale.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I have a nationally syndicated and distributed podcast, Here Weed Go, which you can find on any of the streaming services, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible. It's on all of them. And it is very general interest, but it applies, it covers topics that apply to both the canna-curious, folks who might have tried cannabis when they were in college and not again for 15, 20 years. And it also, I think, applies to the canna connoisseurs, those who might be using every day, might be using different kinds of products within the cannabis space. It is something that gets the interest of all of those audiences and really helps kind of bring both the information, science, business, and technology that have been advancing this industry the last 4 or 5 years to the forefront.
And so we can find the Here We Go podcast you mentioned at the various podcast platforms.
Yep.
Your newsletter, also Here We Go, people can subscribe to that through Arizona Daily Star's newsletter service, but I'm assuming they can also find it through TucsonMarijuanaGuide.com. They can.
They can also find more information about ChronicCon at TucsonMarijuanaGuide.com.
And you had mentioned that's April 22nd. It's going to be here at the
Tucson Expo Center.
Tucson Expo Center,
yes.
Expecting quite a bit there. More than just booths and information. There's going to be a whole event.
There is going to be speakers. I will be the master of ceremonies. Yeah, I haven't been master of ceremonies since 3rd grade when I was at a cakewalk and got to tell people, like, all right, the music's no good anymore, so sit down. But it is going to be absolutely great. Tickets should range anywhere from, we believe, $20 to $60. We will sort that
Various
out a little
packages
bit.
For those prices. Yeah.
And there will be food, free samples. Well, there's no consumption right now of cannabis there on site. Vendors will be able to give you free samples that you can enjoy on your own time and leisure.
So you mentioned enjoying your own time. Something I know about you, we've talked a lot about this. I ask folks sometimes in these questionnaire or in these Q&As, what do you like to do on the weekends? What's your nightlife situation like? In your case, I know you're a breakfast guy. We've gone out and hunted down good breakfast before.
Love me good breakfast.
So share with our audience, what are your one or two favorite breakfast spots here?
If we're going greasy spoon first, I'm a Roberts guy. Love Bobo's, love me a little bit of Guspelons. But Roberts, to me, on Grant, they've got a great chorizo biscuits and gravy. And then their omelets, it's something I've grown up with since I was a little kid.
Well, I know where I'm going now as soon as we're done with this.
You got to try it.
Last question I like to ask everybody, especially because you kind of made this your home, for the last many years. You went to college locally and then worked here with Tucson Media Partners. What do you love about Tucson? Why is it your home?
God, I travel a lot. I get out a lot. And the one thing that is just unbeatable about Tucson is our weather and the natural beauty and splendor that surrounds us. Pretty much 12 months out of the year, I can drive 10 to 15 minutes in any direction and be in the Sonoran Desert, and it's like I'm in the middle of nature. That's not something you can do in New York City or Chicago. In LA, if you try to do it, there are other consequences. Yeah, there are consequences that come with that. But that and the fact that this is such an affordable city. You can go out and have a great night out with somebody for less than $50, and I'm not sure you can do that in a lot of different places. So, between the hiking, being able to walk outside at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on pretty much any day and enjoy the sun, that is hard to beat.
It is hard to beat. Well, Eddie, thanks so much for being with us here today. Eddie Celaya, our cannabis guru here for Tucson Media Partners and the Arizona Daily Star. Find him, the Here We'd Go podcast, wherever you get your podcast platforms. Sign up for the Here We'd Go newsletter at TucsonMarijuanaGuide.com or via the Daily Star, Arizona Daily Star's newsletter sign up page at Tucson.com, and be ready for ChronicCon 2022 coming April 22nd, Tucson Business Expo.
That's right.
Or Tucson Expo Center here in town. And thanks, Eddie, for being with us on another episode of Tucson Media Partners Partner Profiles.
Here we go.